Welcome to Ellevate, Louisiana's October Environment Infrastructure Policy Committee meeting. My name is Julie Stokes. I'm the founder and CEO of Ellevate Louisiana. After serving in the Louisiana legislature, I really wanted to bring women together from across the state to work on policy solutions for the most challenging issues in our state. Today is the first meeting of our housing subcommittee, where we're going to address housing development, affordability, and stability issues going on in Louisiana, which affects all of us. Our subcommittee chair is Amanda Spain, who we're glad to have on Ellevate's board of directors. She's an attorney at Baker Donaldson's Real Estate Practice Group and has extensive experience in housing development. And I'd also like to recognize our subcommittee members, our voting members, which is Diane Baum, CEO and Environmental Director of Baum Environmental Group, Kelly Walker-Starrett, founder of Walker-Starrett Public Affairs and partner with AEG Policy Advisors, Leslie Durham, who's the Executive Director of the Louisiana Infrastructure Technical Assistance Corporation, and Deidre Deculus-Robert, President and CEO of Build Baton Rouge. Today, we'll be talking to Dan Mills, the CEO of the Home Builders Association of Greater New Orleans, and Ashley Vander Meulen, owner of Compass Inspecting Services. Dan Mills leads the HBA GNO, a nonprofit professional organization serving 1,000 builders and associate members across 7 parishes in Louisiana. He also sits on the National Association of Home Builders Executive Officers Council. Ashley Vander Meulen is a certified and licensed professional inspector with more than 20 years of experience. He owns Compass Inspection Services, which he started in 2021, which provides a variety of inspection services with the industry's most up-to-date technology. And so I think right now I'm going to turn it over to Ashley and Dan.
Well, Julie, thank you so much for having us on. The first question I always get hit with in New Orleans is where you went to high school. So I'm proud to say that I am a graduate of De La Salle High School, and Ashley was in my class. So we were actually in high school together. So we'll just get that out there up front.
Very good. And that's back in the days when it was all boys.
That's correct. I think we were the last cohort. So.
Oh, wow.
Nice. That's right. I don't know that I'd have made it through high school with girls there.
Too complicated.
Well, again, thanks so much for having us. And thank you to Amanda for chairing this committee and inviting me to speak for some time here. You know, the Home Builders Association of Greater New Orleans has been the home for licensed contractor for 84 years. And we have recognized in recent years the challenges facing us from an insurance crisis standpoint. And after Ida, we put together an insurance task force that began looking at the urgency of resiliency and resilient housing in Louisiana with increasing climate risks between hurricanes and flooding and extreme heat, as we saw just a couple of years ago. We're seeing disproportionate impact on vulnerable communities. And so resilient housing is not just safety, it's economic inequity as well. And so we've been focusing on the role of the private sector in resilience. So builders and developers are key partners here in implementing resilient design within our community. And one of the things that our insurance task force unveiled was that incentivizing resilient construction through kind of 3 primary vectors: insurance discounts, tax credits, and permitting fast tracks are some of the best ways to drive adoption of resilient housing. And so we've seen some short-term successes with that from the insurance task force, such as adopting the IRC 2021 code that came into effect January of 2023. And it's given us the best most resilient building codes in the country, tied with Florida. FEMA fact sheet rated us at 98.6% compliance, which is best in country. And so it means that new housing stock that we are building today is the best, most resilient housing stock built anywhere in the country. So we have addressed the issue of new housing, but we have this big burden of the existing housing stock that we have within our community, and we have very little data to show us what that resiliency looks like, so that insurance carriers who are considering coming back into our market can clearly understand the risk that they're taking on. So enter the wind mitigation surveyors task force that was instantiated under our remodelers council here at the HBA GNO. This task force, which is co-chaired by Ashley, and he's going to talk about some details on the work that they've done, have really found some success in the last 2 to 2.5 years that they've been working in finding ways to standardize what we call a wind mitigation survey, and also to increase and advocate for the public access to housing resilience data. With collaboration from the Louisiana State Licensing Board of Contractors, with regular participation from the Louisiana Department of Insurance, and with the guidance of LSU CCC and Law House, they've made major advances in funding for databases and in getting the information on wind mitigation surveys out there. Ashley's going to share some amazing information on the return of investment for a wind mitigation survey in terms of savings within our community. And I want to note that all of those wind mitigation surveyors have been paid by private dollars. So the amount of insurance savings that he's going to talk about has come from private investment alone. And we can compare that to the fortified roof program, which originated in our insurance task force. That idea came out of that task force, and they've spent, $40 million and helped out about 4,000 homeowners. But the return on that investment in terms of insurance savings has been less. And so they've made some incredible progress. I'm not going to steal any of Ashley's thunder. He says it better than I can, so I'm going to leave that to him. But suffice to say, we're very proud of the work that we've been doing. It's a long-term investment, and it's going to build up the data set that we have available to demonstrate the resilient housing in our area to attract more carriers back, which is the ultimate path to reducing the insurance risk that we have in our area, and therefore the insurance rates that we all have to pay. So I think that's a good place to cue it up for Ashley to talk to us a little bit.
Thank you, Dan, for that introduction. And yeah, I've got a slideshow to take you through and help you understand the nuts and bolts of really what we're talking about. But the legislature, the governor, Tim Temple, La House, LSU CCC, the State Board of Contractors, they have done leaps and bounds this year to try to address this insurance crisis. And I've had the pleasure as being a co-chair of working through all of this, and there are just daily legal challenges, but I am thrilled to say that if you go to LDI's website, there is a discount list that you can get to help the homeowners understand what discounts they could get from what carrier by doing a wind mitigation survey. And as Dan said, for $300 private dollars, a homeowner can call a wind mitigation surveyor and do an inspection, and that inspection could equate to discounts on your insurance if you have some of the upgrades, and I'll go into greater detail on that. But if you don't, what the survey does is tell you what upgrades you can do to make the home more wind resilient. And that's the key, because we're just in a mess. We have 677,000 homes in the wind zone. About 62% of our existing housing stock is in the wind zone. And most of our housing stock is very old. What Dan speaks of with the Home Builders Association is newer construction. If you have a home built to the 2021 code, you actually have the majority of these upgrades already integrated into your house, and the carrier should be giving you a very good rate as a result of that. But many of us live in homes built in 1970s, 1940, 1900, 1850s. I mean, the list goes on. Many of those homes, matter of fact, most of those homes dating back, let's just pick the year 2000. Before 2000 isn't going to have a lot of these upgrades. It wasn't until after Katrina that all of this wind upgrade really took effect. And in the past 20 years, we've done some major updates to our codes. And what has to happen is we have to take this older housing stock and we have to bring it up to current code. Not all of it, specifically the wind mitigation part. Real change occurred in Florida and Alabama when they reached the 20% mark. And 135,000 homes is basically where we need to get to. And that will bring competition back to our market, and that will finally make this insurance crisis go away. To do that, though, homeowners have to understand what it is they have to do to their older homes to get there. And basically, there are three paths forward. Fortified roof is a potential. The Louisiana Wind Mitigation Survey and code roof replacements. And what has happened in Louisiana is statewide, there is now a requirement for you to file a re-roofing permit to get your roof replaced. When that occurs, that requires a secondary water barrier to be installed on your roof. And that is truly the path forward and the way out of this mess. Case in point, my house, I literally lost 12 shingles for Ida. I had $83,000 worth of damage to the inside of my house. Had I had that secondary water barrier, I would not have had that damage. I would have had to replace 12 shingles and I would have went on with my life. But instead, I was dropped by a carrier, thrown into all of this insurance mess, and my rates went from $6,000 before Ida to $18,000 last year. And that's just for wind insurance. So that is the crisis we speak of. And truly, the reason we're in the mess is because there's no documentation of when these roofs were replaced. So what has happened is these carriers have no data, as Dan alluded to, for how to quantify their risk. Well, legislature has passed the database, and the Wind Mitigation Task Force is working with them to include fortified roofs, code roof replacements, and Louisiana wind mitigation surveys. To break it down, fortified is a path forward, and for most older homes, if not all, you'll never make fortified silver or fortified gold. We're only going to talk about fortified roof, but this is a list of where to find fortified providers. This would be contractors and evaluators. So be sure, if you're going to consider the fortified route, you're using one of these individuals. Everything with fortified starts with an evaluator. I'm one of those rare people that is an evaluator and a wind mitigation surveyor. So we spend a lot of time educating the public, and I give this presentation with Jennifer Van Vranken. I've done it at the HBA, I've done it for the LHBA, and it's insanely important that we get this message out, because in my case, when I did the wind mitigation survey and did a few of these upgrades, I went from $18,000 to $11,000. So in my case, it was a $7,000 savings. Ultimately, I didn't go with Citizens. I went with another carrier, and I got it even lower than that. But I was able to sort through all of this because it was necessity. I mean, at $1,500 a month, I was simply going to have to sell my house. So this is the crisis. And what fortified really boils down to is nailing the roof deck down, sealing it up, which is the secondary water resistive barrier, and locking it in at the edges, which makes the roof, which is the home's first line of defense, very wind resilient. And it is a great upgrade for older homes. It is above code. In all cases, fortified is above code. And it is it's going to cost more because you're going to spend more on the evaluation, and you're going to spend more on materials and labor. But the code in Louisiana is very, very, very close to fortified. So the costs are coming together, and it is a dual threat now, because the wind mitigation and the secondary water barrier and the code roof replacements can absolutely effectively lower your rates, as well as fortified can, because you can go to LDI to see fortified discounts and to see the wind mitigation discounts. And what that does is it empowers the homeowner to make the decision, provided they get a wind mitigation survey, because then they understand. So this is an example of why the secondary water barrier is so important. If you look on the left, you'll see that the plywood seams, which picture a 4x8 sheet, plywood seams are taped and sealed. If you look at the example on the right, or the house on the right, there is no secondary water barrier. So everybody see that. If you go to the next slide, it's quite easy which home you'd rather come back to. This was literally my house. If I'd have had the secondary water barrier, I'd have came home to the house on the left. I did not, so I came home to the house on the right, because Ida, for me, was a 6-hour rain event. The power went out, we ran out of towels, and my wife and I just popped a beer and watched it rain in our house. There was just nothing to do. Had the power stayed on, maybe we could have fought a little more. But anyway, you do what you can to save your house. But so the Louisiana State Uniform Construction Code Council is where the wind mitigation surveyors lie. This is the entity that dictates the survey and actually the codes for Louisiana. Wind mitigation is voluntary. Since it's an older home, you don't have to bring it up to current code. But the message we need to get to homeowners is if you have an older home and you do some of the upgrades, you can absolutely save yourself some money. And what you're going to do is make your home more wind resilient. So it's more than likely going to be there when you come back after the next hurricane event. This is a great brochure on LDI's website for the do-it-yourselfer who wants to learn how to do these upgrades to their home. And the key takeaway in this brochure is insurance carriers that are admitted in the state of Louisiana are required to give discounts now for fortified and for wind mitigation. And this is huge because all of that goes into the database, and it's important to understand the return on investment to try to entice homeowners to move forward on their own. The nuts and bolts of what this means and what wind mitigation means, regardless if we speak fortified, regardless if we speak code, or if we speak wind mitigation, it boils down to these 7 things. The secondary water resistive barrier, I showed how effective that is. And to me, single-handedly, that's the biggest thing that's going to reduce claims and bring competition back to the market. But as you saw in the example, it's taping the seams. It's using an ice and water shield on the entire roof. And in the case of 100% access on the underside of the attic, you can take a roof that is less than 5 years old, and there is a foam solution that you can do that costs a lot less than replacing your roof. And if you call us, we can send you to contractors who can do that. We work hand in hand with roofers and foaming contractors to try to move all of this forward. The windborne debris protection. Windows break, doors open. These occur during hurricanes. And when you have 150 miles an hour racing around your house and your door opens or a window breaks, that pressure has to equalize instantaneously. Folks who have lived through a hurricane may equate it to like a train effect or a train sound. It's literally an enormous whoosh, but that whoosh pulls your roof off. It makes catastrophic loss on your house. So you protect yourself by that by putting plywood, which is not recognized but effective in many cases. But you put an ASTM rated window protection, door protection, or a shutter, or a roller shutter, or corrugated plastic. They actually have a fabric now that's a ballistic nylon that's inexpensive compared to some of these other methods that will allow you to accomplish the wind mitigation discount by getting the ASTM protection on your windows and doors. And then the shape of your roof is important. There's an enormous discount for a hip roof. If the insurance carrier has it wrong and you have a hip roof and they don't know it, the wind mitigation survey will clarify that and get you a very big discount. On that alone, I hear folks telling me that, they save $2,000 or $3,000 a year. Now, if you have a gable roof, which is, if you look at the photo other and you look at the second one, actually the 3 at the top, they're all gable roofs. That roof is prone to failure because that upper wall tends to fall in. And when it falls in, the roof blows off. So one of the big discounts is bracing the gable, which I'll get into later, where you effectively take that gable wall and you brace it to prevent it from moving inward or outward during a storm, and that will give you the same discount as a hip roof. But most homes, gosh, I would say that hadn't been around since 2015. So any homes built before 2015, oh, don't hold me to the number. Maybe it's 09, it's 06, somewhere in there, homes, the gable bracing really started. Before that, it was non-existent, because it was believed those walls just held siding, but they do so much more in terms of catastrophic loss. The type of shingle is incredibly important. So there is a very large carrier in Louisiana who are dropping policies or telling folks they're going to drop them unless they replace their roof. I just heard it happening in Iberville Parish. It's been happening in Jefferson and Orleans for some time, and someone called about Lafourche the other day. But the insurance carriers aren't wrong on this. The shingle quality has improved immensely in the past couple of years. They are basically now rated for 150 or 160 miles an hour, and they're built with better polymers. Shingles after Katrina still use tar or were asphalt based. As those shingles age, they become brittle. As they become brittle, the tar no longer sticks and they become kites in a hurricane. So the newer shingles have a better polymer, are built better, and hopefully will not become brittle as fast, but they have more adherence together. That's what's increasing their wind rating, and Fortified in their testing lab, or IVHS, has actually proven all of this. So there's some merit to what the carrier's saying, but it really stinks when you get a letter saying, because you have an older roof, we're no longer going to insure you. So the type of shingle you have is very important, and the ASTM rating is what gives you the discount on the wind mitigation survey. This is the gable wall bracing. As you can see, it's effectively metal brackets and 2x4 framing that can be retrofitted, and it's actually very cost effective to do this. But what they're doing is they're preventing that wall from moving inward and outward, because inward from the hurricane pushing it on the outside of the gable wall, and the pressure moving it outward in the event of a door opening or a window breaking. So when you do that, you have something as effective as a hip roof that is going to more than likely be there after a storm. And what you have to understand is all of that is to 130 miles an hour. That's the strength we're building our houses to. Now, if you're on the coast, you might have 150 or 160, but most homes in Metairie and New Orleans are 130 to 140 miles an hour. So if you get a tornado in your area, that's going to be a lot more wind, and kind of all bets are off. So we're building to the best we can, but it's not 100%. And I think that's the scary part, and that's why my wife and I have decided we're going to leave for hurricanes from now on. For that reason, and we're updating our 1978 house accordingly to the wind mitigation survey that we did, and hopefully by us doing our best, the home will be there when we return. So one of the final pieces is the weakest link is between the rafter and the top plate, and that's where the roof to wall connection is so important. My house, being built in 78, doesn't have that, and I have to remove sheetrock to get those in. But it is on my list. I haven't gotten there yet, but it is on my list. By connecting the rafter and the top plate, when that door breaks or opens or the window breaks, you're more than likely going to hold the rafter and the top plate together and prevent that catastrophic loss. Those 7 things are the nuts and bolts in what folks really need to understand. And calling a wind mitigation surveyor will answer those questions, because we identify all of those components, and Compass takes an additional step by explaining line by line what upgrades you can do, and many of the other wind mitigation surveyors are starting to follow suit, because education is really the key here. What year was my house built? What of these upgrades do I have? And the ones that I do have, will my carrier give me a discount? That's the nuts and bolts. And that's it. Certainly, I'm biased and would love to let Compass be your guide, but there are many qualified individuals out there who can educate homeowners on how to do this. I gave you the fortified list, and if you go to LSUCCC's website, they will tell you other wind mitigation surveyors, and they're broken down by geographic area.
Okay, so first of all, Ashley, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
I would love to get that word out, and so we'll do everything we can. And I wonder, do we not have any sort of incentive structure from the state to get more people to get these wind surveys done?
So there is a, oh, go ahead, Dan.
Well, I was kind of bring it back into what Ashley was saying there. Just a couple of things to note. When we talk about wind mitigation, we collected and audited some data from a couple of our wind mitigation surveyors, comprising about 300 of those surveys at an average cost of about $300 per wind mitigation survey. That was $90,000 in total investment. The average savings was $2,100 per home that got a wind mitigation survey. That's a total savings of $630,000. So you're talking about a 7-to-1 ratio of savings. And this is all private money at a small cost of $300. We're seeing substantial savings directly to residents living in our communities in the short term. But it's important to recognize you're not upgrading anything. You're documenting the wind mitigation features on your home, which is a primary objective we have for our community. Just like for flood insurance, we get a community standard rating. We get a discount because we've done so much to prevent flooding in our community. Jefferson Parish, for example, just got an additional 10%, so they're 35%. In the same way, we've got to document these features across our community so that our insurance carriers can give those discounts. If we compare that to the fortified roof program, we did 4,000 roofs at 10,000 apiece. That was $40 million. The average savings is estimated to be about $3,000 per policy for a savings of $12 million. So we put 40 million in, we realized 12 million in savings to community members. That's a 1-to-3 ratio.
Yes.
And that was all public money. And in my opinion, probably an unsustainable level to accomplish the resiliency on 120,000 homes we need to document in our database. So Ashley mentioned 600,000 homes in the wind zone being defined by the code system. So essentially south of I-10, right? 600,000 homes. If we reach that 20% goal, we need to document 120,000 homes. Wind mitigation surveys are the number one way that we can achieve documenting that data to attract carriers back, number one. And number two, giving short-term insurance premium relief to our community. So what are we thinking about in terms of policy recommendations? The major barriers are cost and finance, right? So the big things that we're looking at is state level resiliency grant programs. So we want to find ways to help offset the cost if we can for those wind mitigation surveys. What a great investment if we were to put public dollars in the wind mitigation survey is the fast track path for us to document these homes. The second thing is local building code enforcement, which brings up some successes that we've already had. So passing the new codes was key. We passed geotag photo inspections because when 60,000 roofs get knocked off in a storm, there is no state or municipality anywhere in the country that has enough inspectors to come out and inspect all those roofs. So we needed a way to document compliance with the code and the standards without sending a physical person out there, since we can never staff that many people. So that was geotagged photos. And that was a technique we took from Fortified. Now we've instantiated it as law in Louisiana. That inspection can be done by geotagged photos. We've now in 2025 seen statewide permitting adopted. So that means if you don't know anything about Fortified, if you don't know anything about codes, if you don't know anything about licensure, the one thing you need to remember is don't let someone on your roof unless a permit is in your window. And if you've done that one thing, you know that your municipality has already done the homework for you. You know they're licensed, you know they're insured, you know they're installing according to the right standards. So that's a real key. Don't let someone on your roof unless a permit is in your window. We've also got, when you get a wind mitigation survey, Ashley mentioned that he will give advice on what you can do to upgrade your home. We have had a tax deduction on the books for some time in the amount of $5,000 for improvements, wind mitigation improvements to your home. We got that increased, doubled, in fact. So now, if you do these wind mitigation updates that are recommended by your wind mitigation survey, you can deduct up to $10,000 off of your state tax. So this is a nice incentive to encourage private investment into upgrading your home to meet these standards.
Does it carry forward, like if you can't use it all in one year? Because a lot of people's state income tax might not be 10 grand. Can you roll it?
In fact, most people's state tax liability is not 10,000. But again, it's a deduction, not a credit. So that's important. So it reduces your taxable income. So that's part of it, but that one is not something you can carry forward. The other part, the one we talked about with the LDI fortified roof. So we have the award program. You can get up to $10,000. That is limited to the number that is funded. However, they have added a tax credit, and that tax credit can be spread across 3 years up to $10,000. So this means that if you invest the money to put a fortified roof on your home, you can deduct up to $3,333 per year from your taxes from the point that you install it. So we've had some great success there. Again, we've got to get to the point that we document 120,000 homes south of I-10 to create that data set to attract carriers back. Wind mitigation survey is the best path there. And one of the number one things that we want to see happening is to find funding sources to help offset the cost of that wind mitigation survey. You know, many of us can look at that and say it's only $300. But to many of our residents, $300 is a barrier. And we've got to find ways to help those individuals in those communities find insurance savings, because what we're seeing right now is a climbing foreclosure rate. We have folks that are sitting in these homes and they're on fixed incomes and they are seeing flood insurance go up. They're seeing wind and hail insurance going up. And if they don't find relief, they will be priced out of their homes. And St. Bernard Parish, Plaquemines Parish right now is the second highest foreclosure rate in the country. And a lot of that has to do with these increasing costs through insurance. So if we don't want to see our residents displaced, you know, we're not a luxury community. We're a working class community. You can't farm oysters in Alexandria. You can't operate this port from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Folks that live here are working individuals and they need affordable, accessible housing within that workplace. So it's key that we find solutions to this, and we think we're on the right track, but it is a longer term track. It's going to take a couple of years to build this database.
Yeah, and
in order to get there.
And Dan, the key to all of this is the return on investment. You know, getting the word out that, look, yeah, you're just going to spend $300, but odds are it's going to save you money in the long run. And that's where those lists on LDI have been recently added, and they're just huge because you can look at your carrier to see what discounts you can get for doing what.
Yeah, and I wonder have y'all ever tried to get any sort of tax credit or anything for getting the survey done, and then have a program by which the wind survey is given to the insurance company, who then says, if you do this, we would decrease your insurance by X amount?
Yeah, so that's a key thing, and we've been talking to some of our representatives at the state and talking about state level programs. We've also worked very closely at the council level. So in particular, Jefferson Parish has been looking at sourcing funds that could be used to support wind mitigation survey. Especially Councilman Van Branken has been working closely on that. And so as we work to identify those sources, again, it's just having the same voice and saying this is necessary. I saw a note in the chat that just popped up about if they spend $300 on the survey, they may not have the money to do the upgrades. The important thing is the expense on the survey documents those wind mitigation features that are on the home. And we're seeing that better than 80% of the people that do it are seeing insurance savings. So that community member, without doing any work on the house, is very likely to receive some short-term relief on their insurance costs. And then it documents in the public database what resilient features are on that home. So then collectively, you can think about future years. We'll be able to look at that data to do targeted solutions to go out and help the most in need to bring the collective standard of our resiliency up. And so again, we've got to document the data, and that wind mitigation survey is a key component to documenting the data. It can bring short-term relief to our homeowners, but collectively as a community, we've got to get a handle on what's out there so that we can better plan and then lobby for funding that can upgrade those that are most vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but right off the bat, so this $10,000, is that, you said you talked about the $10,000 credit from the state that can be split over 3 years for wind mitigation, and that includes the fortified roof? Or is that for the fortified roof?
Only for fortified roof at the moment.
So all the other things that you could do, like the gables,
There is a tax credit for doing the wind mitigation survey.
okay.
The driving force is the return on investment. And the state has allowed a $10,000 sort of write your own grant where if you have the money, go ahead and replace your roof to the fortified standards. And if you pay the state more than $3,333 a year, you'll recoup the full $10,000 over 3 years. There's also the tax incentives, and then the state also has the free $10,000. If you qualify for that, they will give the roofer $10,000 to replace your roof to the fortified standard, and you pay the difference. And if the home's in Jefferson Parish, there's an additional $5,000. Then they're trying a pilot program, so up to $15,000 in free money to replace your roof to fortified. Because what happened in the grant program was there was a lot of folks who gave the $10,000 back because they couldn't come up with the difference. And the average roof replacement's about $16,000 in that program. So Jennifer, the parish was trying to bridge the gap for some of the low income, and they only have 100 grants, but in this round they're adding that $5,000 to 100 people, so they will contact you. But yes, once we get the data on the backside, as Dan alludes to, we can then start targeting all of that to residents. Maybe we decide hurricane clips are insanely important. Right now, the gable bracing is one of the best things, and it's the lowest cost on the totem pole, and it'll give you the biggest discount in most cases, because the carriers dictate the discounts. Just like the homeowner dictates what upgrades they want to do, or if they want to do the wind mitigation survey or not.
Yeah. Wow, this is just such important information. So I want to look at it, and we have a lot of questions in the chat, and a few of them were from Megan McCormick. And Megan's the chairman of the overall committee. This is the housing subcommittee. And so I also want to let her know that I just made her a co-host if she wanted to ask some of her questions.
So Megan, it's great to see you. I haven't worked with you since the St. Bernard days, but I'm so glad to see you on here. And thanks for the great question. You were asking about 501c and getting the education out there. And that's kind of my closing side of this conversation, because community engagement and education is really key. Resilience, it starts with awareness, empowering our homeowners to understand the resilient nature of their housing stock and what solutions are available to them so that they can plan. So if they are going to make investments, they need to be able to know what those investments are, prioritize them, and evaluate their savings. All things that we're working on with the Wind Mitigation Task Force. The big thing is that educational outreach. And we do have a 501c3. It's called the New Orleans Education League of the Construction Industry, or NOEL for short. And they do regular public programming. They also do code programming for our builders. And they also do mitigation work within the urban community of Jefferson Parish as well. But I'll do a quick plug because they've got two events coming up at the West Bank Regional Library in Jefferson Parish on October 20th at 6 p.m. That's a Monday. And then a second one on Monday, October 27th, 1 week later at 6 p.m. on the East Bank Regional Library. Noel will be presenting about storm mitigation, fortified roof, and insurance tips. They've got a whole panel of speakers that will be covering a range of topics, including Ashley, who is one of the featured speakers at those community outreach events.
Well, I got to tell you right off the bat, Ashley, we need to talk because I need you to come out to River Ridge and tell me what we need to do around here, because I'm sure there are things that we could do to make it better. So you have my email on the calendar.
All right.
Megan, you had more questions? Huh?
No, Dan read my mind earlier with my first question. I just wanted, to underscore how little this costs compared to what your cost savings can potentially be. I mean, it's 7 to 1. You could not, I just can't say that enough. I mean, honestly, and the sad thing about it is if you don't have the $300, and I know that is the case for a lot of people in Louisiana, let's be honest. But if you don't have the $300 now, you're going to have to find it next year, because the likelihood is that your insurance is going to go up by at least $300 next year. So I'm just encouraging everyone in my network, everyone that I know who owns a home, to try to find that $300 or save for that $300 or apply for a credit card to get that $300, because even the interest that you pay if you have to put it on a credit card is worth whatever the savings is likely to be. And so it's so important. In addition to that, I think just building that critical mass so that we can attract more insurers to the market is something that we should all be pushing for right now, because, it's between us and Florida right now. Our country is really, looking to our two states to see what we're going to do about this. And Louisiana could really lead in coming back and, resolving our insurance crisis if we get these three things resolved, wind mitigation certificates, fortified roofs, and the solutions are not difficult. We're not trying to, I know Julie has been through the cancer journey, but this is not a situation where we don't know what to do. This is not like a situation where we're trying to cure cancer. We just don't have solutions out there. We know exactly what we need to do. And so I'm just encouraging everyone to do exactly that and contact Ashley or another wind mitigation company if you know of one. But please get out there, get your appointment scheduled, and get someone out to your home. Get your roof certified.
Yeah.
So important.
And to speak to some of the lower income, Smart Home America is sort of the marketing wing or legislative. They come into the market on behalf of IBHS and Fortified to try to change laws. But one of their new focuses is on lower income, and they actually offer some grants and some other opportunities to folks that may offset the cost of an evaluation. And also FHLB, Dallas Bank, their money is dried up for this year, but next year I'm sure they will get more money. But basically, they're offering up to $15,000 to upgrade your roof to fortified, and they also will give up to $7,000 on new construction. And they're specifically targeted to low income. You have to make less than 120% of the federal median income for that zip code. And that program has put a lot of fortified roofs, and they go hand in hand. Fortified has a marketed solution for roof, but secondary water barrier is the key. They nail it down a little more, but Louisiana just adopted ring shank nails, and rather than being 4.4 for fortified, they're now 6 inches apart for code. So again, fortified is changing the code and making wind resilience so much better. But there are many programs out there. I would encourage everyone to call an evaluator if they want to think about fortified, but call a wind mitigation surveyor to start that road and start that understanding, because once you take it from wind mitigation to 3 or 4 things that that home needs, it's much easier for folks to understand and grasp. You know, like my house, for example, I need shutters and I need hurricane clips, and then I'm up to the 2021 code.
Yeah, like I was thinking about, yeah, when you mentioned the nylon fabric that could go over
Yes.
windows. How does it, like you put clips on the four
So
corners of the
so
window?
you put bolts or screws into the house, into the framing, and they stick out of the siding, and you put there's a plastic clip on the nylon that you cover the window with a hurricane when a hurricane comes, and when the hurricane's not here, you take it down.
That's
So
fantastic.
it goes on and off like plywood, and it's not permanently there like shutters. And then there's also impact glass, which I failed to mention. But there is an impact glass option where your glass is basically meeting the ASTM rating, and then it doesn't look like you have anything on the house. But
Yeah.
those are the most expensive.
Megan touched on something about getting that $300, planning it, getting that money together, and getting it invested. Do it for yourself, but do it for your community. And it's very important that if you get asked the question, "Can I share your wind mitigation survey on our public database?" Tell your friends and neighbors to answer yes, because it's really key. Right now, the wind mitigation survey is issued to the homeowner. And the wind mitigation surveyors are going to start asking that question: can we share this with the voluntary database at LDI? It's really critical that we get that affirmation so that we can get those wind mitigation surveys up and into that database.
Because it proves the value of what we're doing here and proves that, yeah, no, that's fantastic.
It proves to the carrier what that address has. Everything's done by address. And when the carrier sees that we have 5,000 homes in Jefferson Parish that have the secondary barrier, they will increase their coverage in Jefferson Parish and not just want to write north of I-10 or I-12. So collectively, that's where the collective is insanely important. You know,
Yeah.
Orleans Parish, when they get to 10,000 roofs, or even 5,000 designations for fortified, or code roof replacements. Once all that data is there and we're a few years down the road and we get to this 135,000, that's when all of this starts making sense, because it's a long road, because it requires the homeowner to do one of the 7 upgrades.
Do you know how far along we are in getting to that 135,000?
LDI has about 1,000, but it doesn't include the wind mitigation surveys. And well, there's a legal challenge there because the homeowners own it and nobody has authorized it to go to the state. So that's one of the
This is key because there
Achilles
are
heels
an estimated
of the process.
15,000 wind mitigation surveys already conducted, and we want to get those into the database
Correct.
as possible.
Actually, a really good comment that I just wanted to underscore from Leslie that just said that USDA also has a grant for older people who own their home to make upgrades to bring their home up to code. So if the home doesn't need basic repairs to bring the home to code, it might be used to help some older disadvantaged homeowners. I wanted to underscore that.
We do have a number of nonprofits in the greater New Orleans area that are doing great work too. I might throw a shout out to Will Stout with Rebuilding Together. They've done I think they did about 85 fortified roofs in the greater New Orleans area for those that are most in need. So there are an increasing number of charitable institutions and nonprofits within our area that are addressing the roof resiliency. To the extent that we can work together and partner with them, I encourage that. But it's really important. We got to get this database going. And so wind mitigation plays such an important role because, again, short-term savings for our homeowner and long-term savings for our community as we grow the database.
Well, that's a really perfect explanation. And I can't say how much I appreciate this, and I want to move forward with my own wind mitigation survey. And I hope that everybody on the call does, and I hope that everybody listening to this does. And Dan and Ashley, just thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. You know, improving the quality of life in Louisiana is something that we care so deeply about at Ellevate. And building better communities begins with where you live.
Julie, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all of the hard work that you do year in and year out. We appreciate you.
Right back at you, my friends. Thank you again for joining us today, and yeah, have a great rest of your day. If you're interested in these types of policy talks, check us out on Ellevate Louisiana's website, where you can learn more about our events, our policy committees, advocacy efforts, and how to join. That website is ellevatela.org, ELLEVATELA.org. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it.